Hello, everybody, and welcome to How Clinics, our community and health and wellness night. We're here for open discussion tonight on overcoming plateaus and staying motivated in your weight loss journey. I am just going to hang tight here for a moment while we do have a few people coming in. I will actually just kind of stop sharing this screen here as our title page, and I'm going to put out there for you a few poll questions that you can go through that are going to help prompt our conversation, let you understand that a lot of folks are going through this themselves. Now I'm just going to do that little switch here now. And we've got a few folks that are appearing in as they've come through. So as we're here, just going to do the launch of your plateau questions. And while that launch is there, those poll questions, I'm not sure if you can see us all here. My name is Samantha Upshaw. I am a nurse here on the program and co-developer with Dr. Jamie Lee, who is on your screen down here. If you can see him, if not, we will see him very shortly. And then today we also have in our open discussion our health coach on board, who is Claudia. So a few of you have seen us before, whether you've been in our program or in our program or in our office. Those who haven't seen us before, we'll get to know you a lot more as we go through this webinar with you. So I'm going to verbalize some of these questions that we do have here. So if you are on board, we've got them running. So question number 1, have you experienced a plateau in your weight loss journey before? That's right, folks. That's what we're talking about today is plateaus. So we're definitely going to ask you, have you been in this journey with us before? Our next one that we have on board that we're going to ask you as well in the polls is, how much did you lose before you plateaued? So we're going to see maybe some familiar numbers of what we know of where we naturally plateau out. Sometimes we're going to see some different results within there. So as many people as possible can get in and ask those questions, we can definitely give you some more answers. Then we travel on to question number 3, as you guys are almost at 3 here now. I'm seeing some great answers come in. How did your weight loss plateau make you feel? So yes, a lot of folks can just like, that made me feel really crappy, but tell me a little bit more about that. You know, if it made you feel bad, what was it that made you really feel bad? Ask that why. Number 4, after this plateau, this is a question that Dr. Lee actually prompted to me, which I didn't think of, and I'm happy it's here. So after this plateau, did you regain the weight that you lost? So that is one we've got there as well. And I see some folks are answering in here, and I'll give you the answers of what people have been posting so far. And what have you done in the past to get out of your plateau? So as we have some more people joining in there, I'm just going to share with that group here. They may be up to see, but I want everyone to be aware of what we're answering in here. So we definitely have 100% yes on, have you experienced a plateau before? It's not unfamiliar to folks, and I think it's a big battle that's why we've made the webinar today, to kind of talk about that as we go. Mm-hmm. To show you in here too, we've got about a 50. Okay, so how much did you lose before you plateaued? I have 50% in around the 11 to 20 pounds. So what I've done out there for you, those that are just listening in, I've sectioned it out per 10 pounds, just really trying to reach in to see when you plateaued out. So 50% is set in within the 10 to 20 pounds. And then the other 50% is 40 to 50 pounds. Mm-hmm. Sorry that I like seeing those numbers, but it makes sense to me as we're going on. Short answers. I'm going to have to figure out how I get to my short answer section in here. So for those that have actually answered out how your weight loss plateaus have made you feel, I'm going to go back and find those answers very shortly, but I'm going to stick to the polls for a second. After this plateau, did you regain the weight you lost? 100% said yes. Now, 100% meaning that I haven't got all people answering in there yet. So it is interesting, our pre-talk as we've gone on through, but we do have a good answer in there, and yes, as we go. So please keep on going in there if you're just joining us, because this is going to help us answer your questions. We're going to also allow you in the chat section. I'm actually going to try it again today. Someone had said the poll disappeared after the second question, and I apologize for that. What I'm going to have you do is, if you did hear my questions as I went through them, you can come on here to our chat and reply there. So I'm going to put a hello in here. And let's see, we've got a hello to everybody. If you do see that pop up, you can respond in there. I also have activated down here today a raise hand button. So I've raised my hand physically here, but you may see in the corner that I've got my hand up as well. So at any point, if there's any questioning or anyone needs to tune on, even if it's just us, we can do that as well. So I'm going to, I do have a hi from one of the people watching on board. So there's a hi back over there too. Thank you for waving. So I'm going to once again introduce Dr. Jamie Lee, who is a co-producer and owner here at How Clinics. He is a great tool and resource. So every opportunity we have, we're going to share you with him. You will see him throughout the program. Same with myself and Claudia. So I'm going to hand the floor over to you, Dr. Lee. In the meantime, while other folks are coming on board.
Sure. All right, thanks, Sam. So it's exciting to be back again. I know Christmas is around the corner, and it's challenging times around Christmas. So our next session is going to be very interesting. We're doing it a little early, so we want to get the information before then. So this is a very important topic in weight management, because as the first question showed, that everybody plateaus. So this is a natural phenomenon. So I want everyone to understand that this is the way the body responds to the stress that we're putting through. So we don't realize that when you lose weight, it's actually very stressful. It takes actually effort and energy to lose weight, even though we're trying to expend it, right? You know what I mean? And so that's very common. The weight loss amount is very in sync with what we see. I usually say 20 to 30 pounds. Stan put 11 to 20 and 21 to 30. And I think most people will be between 20 and 30. If we had, the between 20 and 30, a lot of people would probably pick that. And that's because just the amount of energy, the way the body adapts to the weight loss, that's kind of the natural number. Usually when we go through weight loss, we get multiple plateaus as well. So the more weight you have to lose, you would typically experience more weight loss plateaus. And if you actually are at a lower weight, a lower BMI, let's say you're slightly overweight, let's say BMI of 29, you tend to plateau a little early, like 10 to 15 pounds as well, right? And so what you're saying in the polls really resonates with us, and that's why it's really important. And one of the last question was that did you regain the weight that you lost? That's really, really important in terms of weight management. And this is why in our clinic we focus on maintenance of weight loss as well, not just the pure weight loss itself, right? And so if you think about your journey, you should ask yourself, why did you regain that weight? Always ask yourself questions, because with your journey of weight loss, there's really no difference to other problems you have in life. If weight is a problem, we're going to approach it very similarly as well, right? And so we want to develop the skills and the mental strength to move forward. And so let's jump back to the weight loss plateaus. And I talk about weight loss plateaus, but the flip side of it is that we have weight gain plateaus as well, right? We don't think about that, but you start to gain weight, and then for some reason you just start to plateau for a bunch of years, and doesn't matter what you kind of do, the way you eat, it stays the same. And then 3, 4, 5 years later, once you stay the same weight, we start to gain more weight. And there's a physiological adaptation as well. And typically a lot of that is that, our basal metabolic rate starts to change, and our basal metabolic rate changes by 1% after the age of 30. So it drops down that much. So no wonder if we do the same thing, eating the same way, work the same job, typically your calorie consumption or energy consumption, your energy expenditure are going to be very consistent. But you're having a slow drop in your metabolic rate, and so you're going to slowly gain the weight. So you have to change too as well, with the way you conduct yourself in terms of activity, the way you eat and stuff like that to kind of help the slow weight gain. So when we talk about plateau, there's no definition of what um, uh, counts for a plateau, and typically it's based on the duration, like how long do you wait until you consider plateau, because our weight can fluctuate day to day, a couple pounds, 2 or 3 pounds. Often it's water weights, our waste products and stuff like that. um, in a week it's a little more. If you see you lost a pound in a week, that's more realistic of actually true weight loss, but even then that could be fluctuations in water weight too as well. I would say the minimum plateau would be about 4 pounds. But for me to be very comfortable and saying I hit a true plateau is usually between 2 to 3 months. That's when you hit a true plateau. About 3 months, I would say that physiologically there's a good adaptation of the body to what you're doing. And so then that leads us to the next question: is what is actually happening when we reach a plateau? So if you think about um, what's going on to your body as you start to lose weight, right? Remember, we talked about the energy input and energy output. When you start to lose weight, you start to do some changes in life. A lot of us eat less frequent meals. We may start to fast. We might go out to eat less. We might reduce the refined food that we have. So really what you're doing is you're changing your energy consumption. So as you change your energy consumption, the body has to compensate, right? And the body has to um, expend energy, find energies where else, right? And so that means they gotta basically get energy from the fat, maybe some muscle breakdown too as well. So when you start to lose weight, what happens is that if you are in a low glycemic state, that means you lost, like for people that do, for example, the ketogenic diet. What happens in the first few weeks, like 8 weeks to 10 weeks, they lose a dramatic amount of weight. But that's not pure fat, right? That's not pure fat. And I want you to remember that, because when we think about weight loss, all we think about typically is fat loss. Absolutely not. There are other constituents in our body that we have to think about when it comes to weight loss in general. So what happens? So most of the time you lose a bit of water weight, right? And if you calorie restrict yourself a lot, you start to produce more fat breakdown, and that becomes your energy source. And if you further restrict your carbohydrate, so in the ketogenic diet, you'll start to produce ketones, right? And so the ketones actually draw water out, right? And so one molecule, it draws water out, and so you actually get what's called ketodiuresis, right? So basically, and it's actually a good tool for people who have a bit of heart failure. So we actually use that, something called VLCD, very low calorie diet, as a therapeutic I used to do in the past to treat heart failure, people with heart disease too as well, right? Because there's some effects in the triglycerides in the muscles of the heart cells. So basically allows it to be less stiff. So you lose a bit of water weight. And so if you really calorie restrict yourself more, what happens is you lose some muscle mass. And so what you'll start to see then is, as you start to lose your muscle mass, what happens is your basal metabolic rate will go down, right? Your basic metabolic rate is highly dependent on the amount of skeletal muscle mass you have in general, right? So that's what's happening. So there's a natural adaptation of the body to start to slow down. And the other thing is that there is a lot of hormones that are involved in metabolism. We talked about the two major hormones, ghrelin and leptin. So ghrelin is the hormone that's secreted in our gut that makes us want to eat. So that starts to increase, and leptin starts to makes us feel full, and starts to start to decrease. And also, as a accessory hormones around that, that also helps us. That also actually causes us to actually slow our metabolism down, and causes to have a slower weight loss as we go along. Um, I don't know if you guys remember the Biggest Loser, right? It's a very it was on TLC for the longest time, and these were patients who were significantly obese, and they would lose like 100 pounds in like I was like several months, right? And so they actually studied these individuals very interestingly. And so what they did was actually they measure their hormones, all that kind of stuff. And in the beginning, you have a baseline level of your ghrelin and leptin hormone. And as they start to lose weight, as I mentioned earlier, their ghrelin starts to rise, so they want to eat, and leptin goes down. what happens is these people, after the show's over, they go back to their own regular lifestyle. So they start to regain their weight again. But what they did was they also studied these people once they regained their weight additionally. And what happens is that what they noticed is that these hormones that started to change don't go back to normal. So what that means is your ghrelin hormone stays higher. So that means you're gonna be more hungry, and your leptin hormone stays lower, right? And so that means your satiety hormone is decreased. So this all this kind of makes us want to eat, right? But the most interesting thing is how the body uses energy. So energy is calories. That's how we define it. And so what they notice is that your muscle efficiency in using calories is significantly better as you lose weight. So there's a natural drive for the body. So what I mean by efficiency. So let's say I do a contraction like this and I burn, let's say 10 calories. I'm just making this up, right? But
Hold on, let me just 10 calories. I'm
I
like
wish
making
I
up
wish
these
it's that
numbers
easy,
right now.
but it's not. It's not. I don't know. Maybe it's like 0.05
Dang.
calories, right? But what happens is, let's say I do an exercise and I do a curl like this. And before my weight loss, I would burn 10 calories. But what happens is that once I've lost the weight, and I regain my weight, um, and also probably during when you're losing weight too, it's happening, is that when I do it again, the body needs less calories to do the exact same thing. So that's very interesting. So there's a huge adaptation that is going on to your body as you're starting to lose weight. And so no wonder why we plateau, right? So your basal metabolic goes down, and so it's a stress, right? So it's a stress that the body wants to fight back. Your energy, your body energy is becoming more efficient in terms of use of your calories. So that's what's happening, right? To us, right? And so, and as I mentioned, if you are very good at losing weight and you do it for a year and you stick to a really good program, you're very disciplined, you typically go through between 2 to 3 plateaus throughout the entire process, right? And so really when you reach a plateau, then is that your energy input is equal to your energy output. So that's pretty simple concept to think about, right? And so everything is balanced. And then this is kind of, we call it in the medical term, homeostasis, right? So everything is in equilibrium. But having said that, though, not true equilibrium. There's a will. We're forcing ourselves to make it equal, right? But there's a physiologic drive for our body to go back up to its highest weight. And you guys might have heard memory weight, muscle memory. That's what it is, right? So memory weight, the body will always remember its highest weight and it wants to go back there. And we all have heard about yo-yo dieting, and this is unfortunately back to that last one of the questions that Sam posted is, did you regain your weight, right? And I think Sam said it was 100% whoever answered the question. And the reason for that is that, all the things I said causes us to go back. So it wasn't you that failed. It wasn't that the programs you did or what you did was wrong. It was right, but maybe you're missing a little something about the maintenance of weight loss, and there's the ability of the body to bring it back. And so because what happens is that you become more efficient in terms of your energy expenditure, and your hormones are different. You're wanting to eat more because of the imbalance. We tend to overshoot after we lose weight, right? So the yo-yo part, we actually tend to gain a little more weight than our previous weight. And we know in our clinic we have a few individuals who've been through bariatric surgery, who've done a lot of Bernstein, who've done a lot of Weight Watchers. So Bernstein is actually a very low calorie diet, BLCD actually. So and what happens is, and if you know the story of Dr. Bernstein, he was actually a physician from New York, and he was a diabetic. So he didn't like the medical way they treated diabetes, and so he actually developed his own way. He was calorie restricting, very low calorie diet, and he was actually successful in managing his diabetes, and that's how it really became very popular. And so it's all over like North America, right? And so those who had multiple attempts at weight loss, as you get older, it becomes harder and harder to lose weight. I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that. Not only because after the age of 30, your metabolism starts to drop by 1% per year, and your skeletal muscle mass decreases 1% per year. So as you can imagine, right? So that's going on too as well, right? And then you have this energy efficiency of the body. And as we get older, we become more professional in our careers. We tend to have more money, in lifestyle, and we tend to indulge more too as well. And so you have that too, right? And we tend to be less active. So it's a huge biosocial, mental, behavioral thing that causes us to plateau and regain our weight too, right? I'm not sure about you, Sam, but what's your experience in terms of, in the clinic, what you see in terms of people, what kind of weight loss number do they get before they start to plateau?
On average, I'm seeing the first lot, as you had mentioned, water, muscle loss, those type of things are happening. It's one of the hardest transitions to do because we're initiating a phase, but it's one of the easier ones where the adaptations hasn't set in. But I do see it around the 20 to 30 pounds, definitely within there. That can happen. The poundage is one, timeline can be another, just depending on as you said in there, BMIs really matter. Having a BMI of 45 versus a 30, we're going to see different shifts in those plateaus, but I am seeing them right at that 3-month zone, or that 20 to 30 pound as it's going along. Some of that can be the natural adaptation of the body, just that natural plateau. But usually what I'm naturally seeing with patients as well, and definitely with myself going on through with any task, is after 3 months, the focus and motivation and those little nuances
Mhm.
have changed. And you're talking about adaptation and our hormones, but
Mhm.
we do it in all aspects without noticing. If we think we get a new job and we finally make a little bit more money, this is like, well, after about 3 months, you're questioning, I'm like, did I get a raise? I seem to have adapted. Or if we decrease our wage, we have to kind of spread things thinner as we get going. But I am seeing it at that 20 mark, and I'm seeing it again probably the next 30 as you go on through. But everyone has their own story of why, but
Mhm.
it usually is not come to me with a why. It's come to me with, I've got a plateau, what is going on? And we haven't quite, that's where we get these why
Mhm.
questions in there, and
Mhm.
awareness.
Yeah. What
um,
about you, Claudia? I mean, you've seen a lot of patients in our clinic too, as well, and you've had experience in the past. What about your experience in terms of the number that people plateau?
Yes, hi everyone. Glad to be here with you guys. Yes, as most of you know, I've been in this journey pretty much all my life, and I experienced every time I lost weight and I hit the plateau, and I always thought it's me. And I'm glad that Dr. Lee mentioned it. It's not you. You won't believe how I felt when I first time I heard it's not me. It wasn't me. But yeah, uh, with the plateau, I honestly, what I learned from the whole experience was that at some point I need to go back and reassess. Because as Dr. Lee mentioned, hunger increases as we lose weight, right? And believe it or not, we grab things, even if we think that our meal is the same, our level of activity is the same, there will be times that we grab things and we put it in our mouth, and then we don't have any recollection of that afterwards.
Mhm.
And I got myself many, many times do that. I was making sandwich for my children, and all of a sudden I noticed, I made 2 sandwich and I had 2 slices of mortadella and 1 slice of Havarti cheese. Right there is like what, 300 calories? There
Mhm.
you go.
Yeah.
Right. So
I've
I
got
would
a live
say
body here, so I
reassess.
do have a question for Claudia as well, Jamie, as
Yes.
we go on. Is you know somebody, as you said, speaking from experience, who has lost weight, regained and lost, and is at where you're at today with the comfortability of your body and the health of your body. Did you notice that your plateaus, as you learned or went through plateaus, did they happen at different times for you on each time of your weight loss? Meaning that you lost weight, you regained, you tried again. Did they segment differently for you, or were they at the same, 30 pounds each time that you plateaued?
No, it was different, but very at the beginning was very similar. At the
Very
beginning
similar?
was
Yep.
similar.
Okay.
But then as I think the longer I stayed on the lower weight, I think my brain maybe got used to it to not force me very quickly to go back to that higher point, because it was so quick. Like for me, I would lose 20 pounds and then get stuck for 2, 3 months and then
Mm-hmm.
back up and a little bit even more than before,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then as I stayed on the lower, I tried, like I very worked on, the relationship I have with food, how I see food, and monitor myself, like really, really monitoring myself. The longer I was on the lower number, it made it felt like my brain is getting the hang of it. So okay, I still can go up and down a little bit, but I'm much more aware of it, what I'm doing. And
Mm-hmm.
automatically I know that I have to reassess what I eat, the water how much water I take. Well,
Mm-hmm.
did I have a lot of stress past in the past week,
Mm-hmm.
or did I take too much of a salt and not noticing that I had too much salt? So I check mark things. And first of all, I won't panic as bad as before.
Mm-hmm.
And second, it feels like, okay, it's now that I know, it's easier to go back on track.
Yeah, those are great points, and Claudia is already giving us our next session. Next kind of things we're going to talk about is how we overcome some of this. That's excellent lead to it. There's a few things I do want to mention, about plateaus too as well, and everybody's plateau is different. And as Claudia said, as you regain lost weight, the plateau changes a little bit, and also there's sex differences too as well. Okay, I mean, if you're a male and versus a female. Male tends to plateau a lot later, and they tend to lose more weight before that, and females tend to plateau a little earlier too as well. Typically, males would be a little more active as well, right? In terms of, let's say, if you count steps or something like that maybe their work is more labor intensive as well. And so they tend to be more tend to plateau down the road a little more. And so if you ask differences as well, if you had bariatric surgery, okay, we have some patients who are bariatric patients, gastric sleeve or gastric root. Why? They tend to differ in terms of their when they plateau. So gastric sleeve, actually, where they cut a portion of the stomach out versus gastric bypass. The gastric bypass will actually plateau later, and I see like 50, 60 pounds before they actually plateau.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the gastric sleeve are very similar to patients who are on these anti-obesity medication like Ozempic and stuff like that, what I mean? And if you ever done weight loss by yourself, and here's the thing about weight loss, right? If you actually do weight loss by yourself, you would plateau about here, okay? If you join a clinic, a professional program, your plateau will be lower. If you combine that's intensive behavioral therapy, IBT. And if you combine that with medication, we know it's actually down here. So to achieve your maximum weight loss or your ideals, whatever it is, you should have all three. But there are obvious exceptions to the rule where there are people who are very disciplined and they made that mental switch, and that's what we try to do at our clinic is make that mental switch for you so that you don't have to rely solely on the food you eat, but it's more your own willpower and resilience to do that, right? And so that's not a tidbit to kind of why we plateau there too. So the difference in plateau.
And that's within a chemical status, right? That's what our
Yeah,
body's doing that we do have control, but the sense
yeah,
of that's where the
hmm
natural
hmm
phases of our hormones
yeah,
go. That's the acceptance piece that we do need to
hmm
have, that we have these hormones that do it, but
hmm
the acceptance of that's where we need to
yeah,
stay is where, as you said, that intervention
hmm
elements come in. You've definitely seen it over the past too with
hmm
your program as it's ebbed and changed, working on one component, adding and adding. And like today,
hmm
where we're at with how clinics
yeah,
is carrying all those pillars
hmm
together. And the reason is because
hmm
of the evidence base that we have. We
hmm
want you to have those best results as well, not just you know, we're here to help you long term
Mhm.
and with those interventions, and not
Mhm.
just as this quick fix for tomorrow's wedding.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah. And I just want to pick up on a point that Claudia said really nicely. Is after a while things become easier. You know, your body is so remarkable at adaptation. So you're trying to lose weight, the body's gonna adapt to that. You know, you're gonna lose weight very quickly, and then you plateau. As well, this is why we have this session. But then, if you can muster the resilience and discipline to actually maintain that plateau for several months, it becomes easier, meaning that you don't have to work as hard thinking about the foods. You know, the fluctuations in weight becomes less too as well. And what we often see is that people start to lose weight again, right? The body has let go of the brakes a little bit and allow the body to move forward. And so the physiological explanation to that is, for example, let's say your ghrelin hormone goes up as you lose in weight, and it's still high. Your body's adapting, the metabolic rate's adapting, it's still high, it's up here, okay? And you were down here. So as you start, let's say you stay at 3 months at this weight. So the ghrelin starts to say, well, the body's like, well, he's not losing any more weight. This is not a threat to the body. Remember, the body always wants to keep you alive, right? Which is a good thing, right? And so what happens is then it's like it's gonna look off the brakes and say, okay, you know what? This person is okay, like me. Um, there's food, it's consistent, you know, gets the same amount of energy input, and actually ground starts to drop down. Remember, I said it never goes back to normal, but it does go down. And so that's why it becomes easier. And the same thing for leptin too as well, right? Other hormones, CCY, CCK, PYY, all the hormones that are involved in our metabolism, appetite, and hunger. So that's actually the physiological explanation to what Claudia was saying, right? And so, so don't give up. Basically, it's a natural. Think of it as a challenge. Your body is challenging you to make sure things are good, right? And it wakes us up. You know, we don't take things for granted. We get complacent, and this is what happens. The studies have shown that as people start to lose weight, the food that they take on their plate becomes slowly more and more over time too as well, subconsciously. That's so dangerous, right? And I think it goes back to what Claudia is saying is you have to reassess, you have to look at what you're doing, you know, look at what your progress is like too as well. So that leads into the next step, you know, is basically how we kind of handle the plateaus, right? So I'm going to speak first. I have a slight different approach than my other colleagues here. I work more on the kind of the neck up, you know, check up from the neck up. I like to start off with that because when that's good, everything falls into place, right? And so really what I do for my patients here is, you know, talking about plateaus in general that we talked about, educating on plateau, understanding that it's a natural phenomenon, and really is that, you know, are you happy with what is going with your current weight loss, right? Because some people might want 100 pounds, some maybe want just 30 pounds. I don't know, right? And so first of all, you know, what's the landscape like? If you're happy, that's fine. Let's maintain what we're doing. Let's see what you're doing. But if you're not happy, then we want, well, what is it you're not happy? Is it just the weight loss, or is it just very slow? It's like a pound a month, 2 pounds a month. You were losing 3 pounds a week before, you know. And so yeah, look at the velocity of weight loss. The velocity of weight loss will always die off. But if you're monitoring of over several months, you're losing a couple of pounds a month, that's not really a plateau. You know, you've slowed down a lot. And so we have to actually be realistic of what's really happening. And so really only time can tell when that happens. So I like to ask the value questions, right? Getting to why did you actually enter this journey, right? And because we want to create perpetual motivation. And I get asked, like, how do I motivate myself to continue losing weight forever, or like maintaining my weight loss forever? And I don't think it's a question about motivation, because if I ask you, you know, are you motivated to lose weight? I'm sure you're gonna say yes, right? It's not about that. What it is that when we do something for a long time, we get something called habitual. And so we get desensitized to it. So it becomes routine. And so it's like, for example, if you drive on the same path, sometimes you're not even thinking of where you're turning, and just automatically happens. So become habitual. So things become habitual. And so we start to become complacent, and things starts to kind of creep back into as well, right? So we're not doing the same things. And so I like to do that. So it's not a matter of motivation. Sometimes we feel that. I think a lot of time is just what Claudia has pointed to, is to refocus. Once we can refocus, we actually start to ignite that motivation again. And so that's how you actually perpetuate motivation, is to refocus on the true desires that you want. If you want to climb Mount Everest, we're gonna go back. If that's your dream, then we're gonna go back to how we're gonna achieve that. You know, if you need to lose another 20 pounds and go work on gain 10 pounds of muscle, then that's what we got to put in front of you so that you actually continue that. You know, you might have smaller goals too as well. We break in, that's a big goal. Obviously, you need, baby steps to get to that. And so reminding yourself of your mini goals too as well, that can allow us to reassess. So for myself, that's usually what I start to do first. I look at kind of a philosophy, a philosophy of life, but as I mentioned earlier, your problem with weight loss is no different from other problems that you have in life, right? The way you handle your problems with your weight loss will smear other problems. So if you give up early, the chances are that you will give up early in other aspects of it. Mm-hmm. And so it's very important. Now, this is just, something that, it's sometimes hard to swallow and hear, but we should at least think about it and examine ourselves. Like Claudia mentioned, we need to re-examine ourselves. We don't want to do the same things and expect different results. That's Einstein's definition of insanity, right? And so what we need to do is reevaluate, what did we do right? I'm sure there are things that you did really, really well. And there are things that, we didn't do as well as we want to, or maybe we didn't put the amount of effort that we should have. Could it be fear of failure? That happens all the time. And it's okay to have fear. Fear motivates us too, right? If you're being chased by someone with a knife, you're going to run as fast as you can, that you've probably never run before. So fear is a good sense. We just need to harness the power of fear to make it to positive energy in this sense. So if you fear cancer, okay, accept that. Maybe there's a cancer history. Then we harness it in a positive way instead of a negative, right? And so these are the things that I tend to work on more, the mental aspect of that. What about you, Sam? I know you do a lot more CBT stuff than me and stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel that I'm going to speak to a few points of what you're speaking about there. Now, I find that on sometimes on our admission, we would have a very heavy set, maybe 75% that work on their extrinsic motivators. Like it's a weight goal and they don't quite know their why, and helping them get into that intrinsic moment. But I think a lot of the feelings that we do have, you're right, is around the fear of failure. It's a big piece that we have set into us that is programmed there, and it is a survival mechanism. As you said, if we kind of went out camping, I'm going to kind of give a story, and a bear approached our tent and was coming and attacking us, but we got scared over that again. Now, if we didn't have that fear nature come back to us, next time, guess what? When I go camping, I'm going to set out. I'm still going to go camping. Love camping, but I'm going to make sure that, you know what, that food is not put where it was before. Follow the proper directions as we go and get going. But that fear is important that we have it, but we don't always have to play on that as well. And is to focus on those things that we have done well. And it's not easy to go. So fear of failure is that other one. Lack of clarity of goals is another one in there as well. But the accountability to oneself. We are very well known as human beings of being accountable for others. It's easier to do that versus trying to set that up internally as we get going. So I think it's really just embedding it into, if it is fear of failure, what does that actually mean to me? That's the next question. So we can have that, but what does fear mean to you? What does that failure mean to you? How have you experienced that in life before? But what did you learn from it? I learned out of my fear of failure with the bear is not to have the food in the back of my truck that was locked. It needs to be in the cab. It needs to kind of be in different places or tied up the tree as we go. But I think it's important that we have that because it's part of our internal motivation that you're going to face. You're going to face that fear of failure. We're going to face all these things because that's where our passengers of our thoughts are initiated to come up with. But we do have to work on a lot of the cognitive element around it of minus the fear. How do we combat fear? How do we accept fear and own that fear as we go?
Now,
But that
sorry.
internal whys is
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Now, Claudia, you mentioned about reassessing. Can you just elaborate, how one can approach that in terms of reassessing what they're doing in terms of analyzing that so that I can make a change?
Yes, I think it is, I feel like it's the way our brain work is that, as you said, when we get comfortable with something, we lose the what am I mean, the word I'm looking for is like maybe focusing on the details of the situation, right? We look at the bigger picture, but the details of how we made it happen is is in the back of our head. We won't pay attention to it. Whereas I notice with the weight, we really have to focus and go back and look at all those little things that we put together that made it happen for us to lose the first 10 pounds. How did I lose it? Right? And I noticed that this rechecking, reassessing it makes me realize that most of the times that I was gaining weight, my meal was the same. My level of activity pretty much was the same, but this not focusing on a snack time or me doing mindless things where the extra calories were coming, and it piles up. It piles up. So I started writing down, tracking what I actually eat, right? And because I noticed when I'm putting, let's say, pasta sauce on my spaghetti, meanwhile, I'm having 2 spoons of it as I'm standing there before I taking my plate to the table. So that counts, right? I'm calling it lunch, dinner, breakfast, brunch, and all that. To my body is all energy coming. And if it's extra, then it's extra, right? So that's how I track them. Actually, I feel like it's very important to track down exactly, because it will give us an honest picture.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing point that you mentioned there, about tracking and being accountable. As Sam said, you can, once you kind of relooked at your motivation, you looked at your whys and hows, and you still need to execute, right? There's what we call in our clinic the executables, or the things what I need to do. That's what people want, to show me the way to do it, right? And I think like what Claudia mentioned is tracking. There's something called recall bias, right? And we all have recall bias, and it's the worst. And they've done studies to show that they ask people estimate the amount of food you eat, and the calories. We're typically 20% to 30% less than we actually truly eat. And so we actually say to ourselves, and when we think about, well, I eat the same, I eat well, I do the same things and stuff like that. But the studies point otherwise, is that we're about 20-30% off in terms of the calorie we consume. And so, like Claudia said, when in doubt, get honest with yourself, right? Track the food that you do for about a week, and you will start to see that naturally you might start to lose weight, because there's a natural phenomenon for the body for yourself to appease yourself. It's just like a patient appeases kind of has better behaviors in a physician's office, etc. Before they see a physician, they might wear their CPAP machine more often, like that kind of stuff I see all the time. And so there's a natural tendency. And so what you'll see that happens. So the first thing, and I totally agree with Claudia, is get some data. You need data. If you go buy a car, you're gonna research, especially if you buy a nice car. You want to know what are the competition, what kind of cars, or what are the specs and stuff like that. Get your data so you can actually see where you're going wrong. so you can make an informed decision and make changes as well, right? So that's very important. And remember, the concept is this: homeostasis, energy in equals energy, energy out, right? And if that's the same, you're not going to budge, right? And so in the first plateau, correcting your kind of, if you're be able to track your food and you're doing okay and you're starting to lose weight, that's great. But there will come a point where, and I see people losing about 80 pounds. I see a lot of times 70 pounds. They get really, really, really stuck because you can only lower your amount of food consumption so much. Okay, so keep that in mind. Remember, we don't want to just lose weight and be thin and have poor health. We want to lose weight and have optimal health, right, guys? And so don't restrict your calorie to the point where you're eating like 800 calories per day. You can do it for a bit if you want to slip into a little dress, and that, and that's okay. I think we all do that, those hacks that we do, right? But in the grand scheme of things, we want to make sure that you have optimal health. So you can reduce your calories, to a certain point. And for myself, for a female, I would say no less than 1,200, depending on your size, maybe 1,100 for sure. I wouldn't go below 1,000, right? That's dependent on your size. Okay, guys. So that's very important. For a male, 1,500. For myself, it's about 1,300 calories. I've been happy there for years and years and years. I can gauge my eating consumption very, very well. But then, like, how do you break that? How do you break that? So that means you have to, one, change the type of foods you eat. Remember, because people come to us and say, well, I want to do low carb. That's all they know. I want to do keto. That's all they know. No, when you come to us, you're going to learn all eating styles. Low carb, the proper way to do keto, like with healthy meats and stuff like that, healthy oils. You're going to learn how to do plant-based. You're going to learn to do complex carbohydrates to weight loss. And Sam can attest to this, and Claude, I'm not sure if Claude as well, because Sam has sat in my sessions where I tell the individual plateau to actually eat more food, but I'll tell them what to eat. And
it works every time.
It works every time.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, they actually start to lose weight. And part of that is that when you have low energy, like low amounts of food, you're gonna have decreased energy, so you're not gonna move as much too, right? It's a double-edged sword. Yeah, you're gonna have less calorie, but you're not gonna move as much, so your output is less. And also the type of food you eat. Remember, I told you about in the past, or a couple lectures ago, the webinars we had about thermogenic effective food. That counts for 10% of your energy expenditure. So that's a lot over time. So if your BMR is like what, let's say 1,800, which is fairly decent. That's 180 per day. Do for 2 weeks, right? I can't do math. I'm not good at math. So I'm going to leave that to Sam or somebody. But you start to change, right? So as your body starts to change, you need to start to change. And here's an awesome saying I've heard. It's not my saying. Is that you can never step on a river twice, even at the same spot, because the water continues to flow. The world is constantly changing, and you need to change over time to adapt to your plateau. And that's part of the problem is that we don't change. We do the same thing and expect the same results, and we expect to break the plateau. So you can change the way you eat, right? Whether it's, the amount of food, the type of food, have some fun with that, right? It's going to be healthy. You're kind of in that weight loss mode, right? But, if you're not sure, ask us how to do it. Ask someone how to do it, a dietitian, nutritionist, or whatever, right? To do it do it a healthy way. Or the other part is you gotta increase your energy expenditure. That means exercise. And so one of the key things I always tell in my clinic is that you can lose 80 pounds, not a problem. That's great. You've increased your lifespan by 8 years, by the way, if you drop your BMI by about 7 or 8. 5 to 8 years. That's massive. There's nothing you can really do in this world to increase your longevity by 5 to 8 years, by just losing weight, right? But the problem is that if I do a body analysis scan on you, your proportion of fat is almost identical, 1 to 2% different. So what does that mean? You've lost weight, but you've lost water weight, you've lost fat, but you've lost muscle mass. So your relative percentages of body fat is the exact same. The ideal way to lose weight is lose your fat, but gain muscle. That way, what happens is that your percentage of body fat decreases. And so there is still health risk when you have high percentage body fat, right? There's multiple ways to dissect to class 1 obesity, right? So if your BMI is more than 30, you're class 1 obesity. BMI 32, you're class 2 obesity. BMI of 40 up, you're class 3 obesity. But if your fat percentage for a male is more than 25%, it's actually you consider overweight. And for a female, 27%, she's overweight. So there's different ways to skin a cat, right? And so the ultimate health is that also you have to change your composition. And this is why you don't want to eat the same style all the time. Because when you want to build muscle mass, you want a little more carbohydrate because you want to do more energy. You want the protein. You want to increase your muscle mass. So that changes. So when we look at the overall picture, that's the direction you should be moving into as well.
Mm-hmm. And we see some of those things throughout our clinic. We definitely see like our role with our patients is, as you said, try and maintain that muscle. It's there for a longevity piece. It's there for energy. It's there for strength. It's a brilliant piece that we have. So when we are training our individuals to lose fat and maintain their muscle or gain it at the same time, that weight loss journey does look different compared to your home journey. You know, you can shift that weight very quickly, but water and muscle are typically the things that are going, and that's what you don't see. So I do use that body analysis machine here, minus every 3 months for the patients of checking in with them. But when they come in and state, I'm plateauing, you know, let's talk about the facts first. You know, let's actually, before we bring in emotions and know all those things, and you know, I'll have my talk with them prior, but let's use the body analysis machine. Let's actually see that most of the time what I'm finding with patients that are coming in and stating that they've plateaued in our program is because all of a sudden they're maintaining their muscle and they're losing a little bit of fat within there too. But the components are shifting, but the weight stays the same on the scale. And that's the deceiving thing with our scales at home. And the detriment of weight loss at home with individuals just trying it by themselves is because you don't get to see what you're losing. And it's important what you lose in that journey. As Dr. Lee said, you can still, you know, have that 80 pounds, but your fat mass remains the same. So we haven't really corrected much other than you look good and that extrinsic sense of motivation is there. But it's not shaping that change as you go. So it's important to know what you're shifting and where, so you know what to do next as well. And a lot of those times it's a, you know what, look at that. Like your scale is telling you things are staying the same, but how are you feeling and what are you doing? Because this is really great of what you're experiencing here. Now, obviously there is some cases that, you know, we are plateauing or we've done the wrong shift, but that's why we have this machinery is for that evidence base for you. So we can go in and tweak it while we're there when you're in the science and you're in that motion as you get going.
Perfect. So I just want to summarize, you know, this session here we have, you know, first of all, guys, you know, plateau is very natural. If you have you know, if you have a lot of weight to lose, you know, you will have multiple plateaus throughout your journey, right? And because it's natural, you know, the most important thing is for us is not to give up, you know, to endure. And that's where growth really comes from, right? You can only grow when you meet kind of the tribulations in life, right? And when things are very kosher, very good, you know, we don't really learn we don't develop further in terms of personality and stuff like that, right? So it's very important for us to kind of endure and go through, and it does get easier as you stay the same weight, right? And so as that happens, we should start to re-examine our values and goals and ask a lot of the questions, the hows and whys we're doing this, so it keeps us motivated, and to refocus back on our mini goals and our ultimate goals per se, as well. So that's kind of the checkup from the neck up perspective. And then we want to do the executables. I mean, that's kind of these strategies. And so what Claudia said is just kind of re-examining what we're doing, right? So tracking kind of the foods you're eating, tracking kind of the things you're drinking, tracking how often you've gone out and stuff like that too as well, right? And that will help you at least collect some data to see where maybe you're going wrong as well. And remember, it's not always about the pounds. You will feel better for sure, but you want to still be extremely functional as you get older. For example, brain atrophy is correlated to skeletal muscle mass, and brain atrophy is associated with dementia. And so all these things you're doing, and skeletal muscle mass also is correlated with reduction in osteoporosis and fractures, with falls and stuff, and hip fractures and femur fractures. And so, don't be pigeonholed into just the numbers of the pounds, as Sam is saying. Your body might be changing inside as well. And so give yourself some credit in terms of, if you're doing the right things, believe your body that it will help you out in the right way, because the body wants to live, right? And I think, for those that attended here, we will give a little more, the executables with respect to the things you can implement fairly quickly to kind of, break the plateau sooner than later. And that's all it is, right? If you can break it sooner than later, yay.
Absolutely. And I think one of those avenues that I can share for those who are watching live or our rerun as we go is we do have a blog out on our website, Overcoming Plateaus and Staying Motivated in Your Weight Loss, the same as our webinar here. But it's a recap in there as well that you may find something familiar in there. I do have a few strategies within there for overcoming your plateaus, things that we've talked about today, reviewing and adjusting. Some things that we didn't talk about there briefly is strength training, because we talked about it at the beginning of weight, water loss and muscle loss, but our strength training itself can help build up that muscle mass and that metabolism again, and help that as you transition, looking at your routines and staying hydrated. But it talks a lot more in there as well, and definitely we're reaching out with a few little tools. I think our live folks will get access to a 24-hour daily tracker. So let's actually be aware not only around our food, but about the actions and how you're feeling throughout the day, and what does it truly look like. But because, as Claudia said, cooking and eating while you're cooking at the same time, that's my Nan spaghetti sauce. It seems to be spaghetti with yourself as well. But I realized that she was saying that. I'm like, I really don't know how many. I have a lot of mouthfuls of that before cooking. I'm full by the time it's there, but I'm going to count next time.
That's right.
I am going to count next time, because I think what I need to do is you're going to go through it again.
Yeah.
And is to actually learn from that as you go, and is to take this next experience as you go into it, not as here I go with this fear of failure moment, but here I am in an inquisitive, scientific mind to see what I really do. And then the next time, or maybe while I'm at it, if I have a cue to make the change, I can. But you have to run through it a few times. We have to go through errors about 8 to 9 times before the 10th time we get it right and actually are able to flow with it appropriately. So please don't pick up a task and think day one that you're going to get it straight away. There may be some things that you do because they are something that you've practiced internally, and they have an internal motivation that we're more adapted to versus our extrinsic moments. But I want you all to go out there and find those little things that you can challenge yourself that you're struggling with, and is to release yourself from feeling bad about it. That it is a natural factor with our plateau. You do have places that you can cue in with some tools and tasks, but let's really just embed and be aware. And I hope that you do fill out that 24-hour journal. It's hard. And guess what? You're going to tell yourself, that's too much work. I have to do this every hour. I'm not going to complete this. Well, if what we're saying about this form is probably what we're saying to ourselves around this plateau too. So take ownership of these feelings, and run with it as you get going. And I think that our next, what I've got on the plan is actually coming up after this, is because we talked about plateaus, the motivation, but I think one of our talks maybe in January coming up is going to be around the power of accountability, oneself accountability, looking at the deflection of responsibility that we've talked about before with Dr. Lee here as well. But really, it's about resiliency. I think that the biggest portion here of transitioning through these plateaus is learning about resiliency and putting that to the test itself. So that'll be coming up on our next few talks. We do have some lovely webinars coming up as we go on through, and excuse my eyes if they're down, because you guys are probably used to this by now. I'm always seeking, I've got already 4 blogs and webinars planned as we get going, but this new one is December 13th. It's a little earlier. And the reason being is because the title that I've picked is Managing Weight During Stressful Times, and being our holiday edition. I wanted to get that to you sooner than later. So you've already had an experience to talk to us about before the 13th, because I'm sure some of us are going to have some Christmas parties or are getting the mindset setting out that way, or some holiday that you have. But bring in those experiences that you've had from previous holiday seasons. Let's just get in there and see how we can build off that resiliency there, and moving on through and managing the weight when we're faced with our community shoving things at us. You know, I was in Kitchener today, and once again, all the patients, I'm just seeing them come in. These are from the other physician, but they're bringing handfuls of chocolates and handfuls of cookies. So it was a conversation with the staff. You don't want it. No, we don't want it. Well, how are you going to handle that? You know, what are we going to do? How are we going to share this story? Because your story that you share with them is going to be powerful and help them learn. So balancing act, balancing act itself. So ACT acronym is in there as well, acceptance and commitment therapy during that time. So we look forward to seeing you in December. We hope that you are enjoying your holiday season, whatever you celebrate throughout this season. Enjoy that with yourselves and your family. And if there is any questions in regards to this webinar, please do reach out. Give us a call, send us an email, go onto our website there and reach out. And we'll continue on doing these webinars with your input. Any closure from you guys there at all?
Claudia?
Okay, I can always talk on more, Claudia, while you're here too. The other moment that I'm going to share as a giveaway is that Claudia will share a little information around finding your why. I think it's important. We'll find that here within us in our programming as well, but some little things and questions to start thinking about your why.
Yes. Sam mentioned about that focusing on our goals and reviewing our why we are in this journey. Yes, absolutely. I feel like it's very, very hard to get motivated when you don't have a clear vision of what is it that you're looking for. So having that complete idea or picture of what I want for my future, it is extremely important. And you need to ask yourself, first of all, why am I here? Okay, for example, I'm here for, to have a better health. But why having a better health is important to you? Why do you want to be healthy? Because I want to do this in future, right? So you need to get to that one big why beneath all those why, and that's exactly where you find it right here. It is important to you. It is part of your identity. It is what you value in life. That is the why that you want to stick to, because you need to remind yourself when you are assessing or reassessing things, keep that in mind, the reason you are doing this. Because the reason is not the wedding that you're going in next month. The reason is way more important, way more personal than that. So find that why beneath all the whys for you, and then remind yourself, reflect on it on a regular basis, on a daily basis if you can, because that's how you keep going, right? As I said, I feel like it's really, really hard to keep connection and get motivated and excited over something that you don't have a vision of it.
Or somebody else's vision, right?
Yeah.
But thank you very much. I'm going to close down the webinar. We're at that hour mark. And if there's any other comments, as I said, reach out to us, and we'll see you on December 13th. Take care, guys.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.